Radio Manchester, satellite weather with Diane Oxbury.
The best of the weather will definitely be around first thing this morning, because as you head through the day, we've got a weather front coming toward us from the Irish Sea. It means from lunchtime onward, you'll lose a lot of the sunshine. The leading edge of the cloud pushes in first. And by the back end of the day, it looks like we will see some rain coming through. Most of daylight hours, though, are dry and fairly fine with a top temperature of 9 Celsius.
Lunchtimes belong to Beswick.
Allan Beswick.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Hiya. Now, we had our suspicions, didn't we, about Cristiano Ronaldo. We had our suspicions that, well, frankly, he wasn't much of a driver. I don't know. Might not have been him. The bridge might have jumped out and hit his car. We can't be sure. I wasn't there. Yeah. But we did have our suspicions that he couldn't drive. But it's only recently we discovered what an arse he is. I'll grant you a complete talented arse, an extremely wealthy arse, but still an arse. I'll tell you why I mention it. It might not be him. It might be an imposter driving a Bentley. It might not be him at all. It looks like him, sounds like him. Didn't hit the fence, so it might not be him. Anyway, he's parked his Bentley on a spot designated for people with disabilities. Well, his only disability is he's a complete and utter arse. So there you are. Anyway, we got that out of my chest. I feel better for that. Yeah. No, I won't park near him, you never know. And I certainly won't want to be a wall on a bridge that he's going under. But apart from that, I'm sure he's a lovely bloke. And he's got very dainty feet. Yeah. Anyway, where were we? Yeah. Well, he deserves all he gets. Somebody took a photograph of it, and that's fine by me. At least he's not a copper that had gone to jail for taking a photograph of him. Anyway, good day to you. How are you? And the first text today says, Alan, well done to that custard woman who splurged the notorious crème anglaise, Mandy, this morning. Then followed it with a quote of the year. The only thing green about Peter Mandelson is the slime coursing through his veins. What a woman! I want to marry her, says Derek in Lee. Well, your chances are slim. I think she's fussy. But then, not everybody agrees. George Osborne, who's... Well, we'll talk about him in a minute for another reason, but George Osborne said, he's the Shadow Chancellor, an MP for Tatton, of course, he said, such protests were not the way to influence the democratic process. I don't think that's really the best way to advance your cause. I don't want to see another runway built at Heathrow. I'm committed to trying to reduce the carbon emissions in the UK and tackle climate change. But I think these things are best dealt with through talking to people, getting the right policies, not by throwing custard or anything else. Well, fair enough. Well done, Gideon. But then there's a story in The Independent that caught my eye, particularly because it was him that was saying it. And there's room for interpretation, I'll grant you. But this is what the headline says. Front page... sorry, not the front page, but the main headline. On page 18 of The Independent, Osborne says the Tories will end the money-for-nothing society. Now, what does he mean by that? The Conservatives will tell voters today that they will have to swallow tough economic medicine if the party wins power, as David Cameron ends Labour's money-for-nothing society. Now, there are people who get money for nothing. Quite a lot of it is money for nothing, like if you make a balls of a bank, you get a pension of £750,000 a year. There are people who sit on their bum and won't go out to work because they're lazy, idle, good-for-nothings. And they, too, get money for nothing. And there are many who would say it would be marvellous if we ended that. But what does he mean when he says money for nothing? Gideon Osborne is a very, very wealthy man. And he hasn't earned a lick of it. He's a wealthy man because his mum and dad were wealthy. David Cameron is a very, very wealthy man. He hasn't earned it. He hasn't gone out and got a job and slaved for it. He was born wealthy. Now, if all you have to do to be wealthy is be born, then surely that is definitely money for nothing. You didn't do anything. All you did was get created, and your mum, dad, and for those that believe God was involved in that, not you. You didn't do a thing. You didn't have a choice. The seed was fertilised, it grew into a big lump, then it got even bigger, and arms and legs and eyes and noses, and then after 3/4 of a year it fell out, and then it woke up, and suddenly it was rich. So if we're doing away with money for nothing, let's start with the ones that get money at the very beginning of their life for nothing. Let's double, treble, quadruple. Let's make inheritance tax 99%. Now you'll say, what about me kids? Stuff your kids, because your kids, frankly, will have exactly the same as Gideon Osborne. Well, he was Gideon when he was born. Gideon Osborne. George now, because you can't get elected when you're called Gideon, can you, dear God? Anyway, no, he changed his name long before then. But Gideon Osborne was born a millionaire. David Cameron was born a millionaire. Your kids, they might inherit your house if it's got any value left in it by the time you snuff it. But to all intents and purposes, they'll be broke. And they were broke when they were born. So if we're doing away with money for nothing, oughtn't we to take inheritance off the rich?
Eamon and Diane.
It's about you.
Well, a few years ago, my daughter, she'd only started school, she was about 5.5, 6, and then we went to parents' evening. My husband couldn't go his away, so I went with my sister-in-law, and up on the board, these papers all wrote out about Mummy and Daddy having this fight. She wrote it all down. And the teacher put it on the board, and everybody was looking at it.
It's about Manchester.
We clubbed together and employed a small army of people. They only work nights, and they don't have to do much work, they just have to lie across your windscreen.
Make sure it's nice and warm.
Yes. It's about Eamon and Diane.
This is a feast for the taking.
Eamon O'Neill, Diane Oxbury.
Back Monday morning at 6.
BBC Radio Manchester.
John in Bolton asks via text, Alan, why do you not hear anything about Australia's economy? Are they affected by the recession? The media rarely report on their economy and social issues. John, that's because we don't give a stuff. Australia is on the other side of the world. It's got a population, I think, 10 million or something. It's a huge, huge place. It's got a load and loads and loads of racist whites who left their home country out of greed. So, frankly, we don't care about Australia. We don't. All right, it's nice when they come over here with their cricket teams and their rugby teams and beaters. We kind of enjoy that. But the economy of Australia's immaterial in the great world, isn't it? Doesn't matter. They've got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of, well, poisonous spiders. Who gives us stuff? They're not exactly a world leader, are they? They might become one, but right now they ain't. So that's why you don't hear much about Australia's economy. But seeing as how you ask, it's as stuffed as everybody else's. Yeah, they're struggling too. They are. Indeed, there was a programme. I was sat minding my own business having a cup of coffee this morning before I come out, and I put the telly on. I don't normally do that. I can't be doing my daytime telly. Anyway, I put the telly on, and there was a programme on, and Bob Greaves, you remember Bob used to work at Granada? Bob Greaves was on. And him and his wife were thinking of moving to Australia. And so they went over there. No, I'm not telling you anything out of school. I'm not revealing secrets of some media colleague. I mean, it was on the telly, for God's sake. But she's, his wife is, now what was it now? One of them therapists anyway. I don't know what it was, some kind of therapy. And she was gonna work in Australia, gonna set up her own business in Cairns in Australia. And they worked out that over there she'd earn about 12,000 a year, the equivalent of 12,000 a year. House prices had expanded like ours, but the economy, frankly, wasn't having a very good time. And I've heard that before as well, but there you are. Such is. 0161 228 2255. Stuart in Crumpsall said, Margaret Thatcher did this country a massive favour when she ground the miners and the dockers into submission. It was something they'd asked for years, of holding this country to ransom with their regular strikes for more pay for a job that was not worth more pay. It's not our fault. It's not our fault they couldn't get a better job because they were not educated through not paying attention at school. My dad was born and bred around the docks and pits of Salford, and he paid attention at school and became an engineer, an option which was open to everybody with half a brain. I, for one, was sick of the power going off every time the dark nights came. No lights in the streets, houses and businesses, including pubs, who had electric generators and pumps. The price of coal, through their successful strikes, caused the price of coal to soar, making it cheaper to import coal from abroad. They were fools to follow Scargill like lemons. They lost the respect of the British people. That's what he says, and got what they asked for. Well done, Maggie, says Stuart in Crumpsall. Remember yesterday we were talking about the 25th anniversary of the beginning of the miners' strike. It all started yesterday. There's a story in, I've forgotten which paper it is. Yeah, the Express. There's a story in the Express today about how Arthur Scargill is a broken man. No doubt Stuart would say, who cares? He deserves it. We didn't really get to as many people who called in yesterday about the miners' strike as we wanted to. So if you've got a comment on that from yesterday, or indeed from 25 years ago, feel free. 0161 228 2255. Do you think Margaret Thatcher, now Lady Thatcher, of course, but do you think Margaret Thatcher, the then Prime Minister, did the right thing in Stuart's terms, grinding the miners and the power workers into the soil? Did she do the right thing? You tell me. Russ from Lee. OK, you can call me stupid, but instead of the government borrowing money from the International Bank, why can't they just print more money? Russ in Lee. They can. And if you were listening to the news in the past 24 hours, they not only can, they will. I think the figure, wasn't the figure 17 billion, or was it 27 billion? After about 9 and 11 pence, frankly, the numbers mean nothing to me, but they are going to do precisely that. They are going to print more money. But, of course, that makes the money worth less, I'm led to believe, but I don't quite know, for we no longer have, as somebody said on the programme just the other day, we no longer have the gold standard. Also by text, Alan, how is it that it's against the law to be in possession of an illegal drug, and if caught you would be charged? However, it is possible to manifest proof of having been in possession without being charged. For example, one could admit to being an addict by going into rehab or by regularly going to the chemist for a legal substitute. Why is it that one has to be caught in possession when it can be proved that they had previously been in possession, as it were? The reasoning behind that is actually comparatively simple, and it is this. If you say that the person is a drug addict, and we've got evidence that he is, yes, you can reflect that backwards and say, well, he was a drug addict, he is a drug addict, so he must have had contact with the drug. What you can't do is prove that he had illegal contact with the drug. For example, he may have been in a country where it is legal. I don't know of such a country with hard drugs, but he may have been, and he may have got access to it there. We don't know. And unless you can prove beyond reasonable doubt, you're not going to get a conviction. So they made the offence, you are guilty if you are caught in possession of the drug. That's it. John in Wigan. Hiya, John.
Hello, Alan. I was just listening to the tirade that you read out about the man who was downgrading the miners, about them being ill-educated. Well, I'm a skilled mechanical engineer. I used to work at Gullick Dobson Limited, the largest mining engineering company in the world, and was infinitely involved with the miners' strike. I knew quite a few miners who was on strike, and my company was making equipment for the coal mines to refurbish them after the miners' strike ended. But the guy turned around and said that the miners were ill-educated. The original college, technical college in Wigan in Library Street, was a mining engineering technical college. It was founded for the education of miners. So I don't know where this guy gets his history from about him saying that they was ill-educated, because they certainly weren't.
Yes, they were. If you're talking about mining engineers, those are qualified engineers who happen to work underground. But the miner, the coal-face miner, who merely lay on his belly in his own crap with a pickaxe, he didn't have many O-levels for that.
They had infinite amount of job knowledge.
Well, job knowledge, yes, but we're not talking about...
But a lot of them
on the day they started, they didn't have a bean's worth of job knowledge.
No, but they had to be taught. They used to go to the old Boston mining engineering.
They only had to be taught how to swing an hammer and a pick.
No, they was taught the principles about mining and about all aspects of the job.
No, they weren't. The job developed a bit. When the easiest way to measure it is to find out the guys who lost their jobs, the coal-face workers who lost their jobs, yeah? And they were, I think we found yesterday there were over 100,000 of them. What did they do for a living afterwards? How many became doctors? How many became lawyers? They didn't. They became bus drivers, taxi drivers. There's nothing wrong with being a bus driver, but you don't have to be clever for it.
Well, the people I used to knock around with who was involved in the coal mines were quite educated men.
In what way? What do you mean by... You'll have to give me a definition of educated now to stand that up. What do you mean by educated?
Well, by that, they had a wide view on life.
That's not an education. You get that from going to pictures. You see, I'm a working class lad. I was. I come from working class stock. My parents, my friends' parents, they were all working class. My father is, in my view, an extremely intelligent man. But he's not educated. The two things are different. He's not educated because in his household you left school at 14 and you went grafting.
Yeah. Well, you probably could say they're educated, but the bloke turned around and said more or less made a statement as it was all nincompoops. They were badly led in the miners' strike, I'll admit that. But they certainly wasn't as educated as my dealings with them.
But he said they didn't pay attention at school, and I've interviewed lots and lots of miners and did a whole series about miners, and frankly, they didn't pay attention at school. I can remember them saying to me now, we knew when we were at school all we were going to do was walk down road to the pit. That were it. That were a job. That were a life. That were what we were going to do.
Well,
that's what they said. Now, that's not to say they couldn't have been educated had they chosen, but they didn't. They were down at pit because they were bugger all else.
Well, yeah, and Mrs. Thatcher made sure there was bugger all else when they came up.
Now you're arguing against yourself, John. Have a good day, mate.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. 0161 228 2255. Let us not castigate the working classes, of which I used to be one, for not being educated. There's nothing wrong with not being educated. Just gone 12 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Anna Dawson.
The family of a Greater Manchester woman stabbed to death by her husband have criticised the Crown Prosecution Service for not charging him at an earlier stage. 36-year-old Malik Manan has been sentenced to life in prison for murdering Sabina Akhtar at their home in Levenshulme. She'd already made complaints to the police about his violence towards her. Up to 40 construction companies in the UK are being investigated over claims they paid for confidential information to check up on people they wanted to employ. The details of 3,000 people were held in secret by a firm in the West Midlands. And Peter Mandelson's had green custard thrown in his face by a climate change protester. The woman said she attacked the Trade Secretary for his role in approving plans to build a third runway at Heathrow. Manchester's weather, lots of sunshine but clouding over later. Highs of 9 Celsius.
Attack the price of somebody's house and they'll turn to violence.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, on the whole, we're looking fairly good on the motorways this lunchtime. Just looking through the Irwell Valley on the M60 right now, and everything seems to be moving well there. Junction 17 and 16. A little bit slow on the southbound M6 once you get down into the Cheshire stretch. Southbound from Knutsford at 19 down to Holmes Chapel is looking fairly slow moving, as is the westbound M62. Just looking at the camera there at Junction 11 at Birchwood, and it seems to be a fairly slow move along the M62 right now. For us in the city centre, we've got Portland Street with one lane closed past the Britannia Hotel there. That's from Minshall Street to Chorlton Street, so that's causing one or two delays along Newton Street heading into the city and into the airport. Flight BA2914 was due in from London Gatwick at 12:40, has now been cancelled. Any updates, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Derek Marks.
Decongesting Manchester, one car at a time. 2020 traffic.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Kev in Padgate asks via email, what is a billion? Is it a million or 1,000 million? Depends where you are when you ask, Kev. In this country, a billion is generally regarded to be 1,000 times a million. 1,000 million. That's a billion in this country. In other countries, including in America, it is sometimes a billion squared. But no, in this country, a billion is 1,000 million. All right? All right. We're making progress, aren't we? We're making progress. Yeah. 0161 228 2255. Stuart in Stockport says, a sign in an Indian restaurant says, you don't have to be Madhur Jaffrey to work here, but it helps. You know that you don't have to be mad, but you don't have to be Madhur Jaffrey. Well done them, I like that. Ashley Cole, he's going to have to climb a mountain to get back in the Chelsea side. That's Mark in Stockport. That's quite funny when you think about it, because his girlfriend, whose name escaped, his wife, whose name is... Cheryl, there you are. It's not her name, Cheryl. Anyway, never mind. Cheryl Cole, she is walking up Kilimanjaro. I resist saying climbing Kilimanjaro. It's not like ropes and all that. It's a walk, a bloody hard walk, but a walk nonetheless. Aye, Beswick, that woman who soaked Mandy should at least be made to pay his cleaning bill. I can't stand Mandy, but I think we all have the right to go about our business without being assaulted. Throw the book at her. She's a disgrace. So says Gary in Manchester, referring to the fact that green custard, she took the trouble. I mean, you've got to admire somebody for effort at least, haven't you? She took the trouble, seeing as how she was a green campaigner, she took the trouble to find green custard. That's good, isn't it? Yes, it's nice. We like that. Well, we like the fact that she took the trouble. We don't like the fact that she assaulted the man as he went about his business. Jeff says, surprised to say the least, Alan, that it was the 20th anniversary of the miners' strike yesterday. There was not one single programme or any news documentary footage shown last night on any channel. Thank God for radio. And just a further point, maybe Stuart would think differently had he himself been unfortunate enough to have been a miner at the time of 1984, which obviously he was not. Well, indeed, he may well have had an entirely different view, but that doesn't negate his view. Stuart's view was that Maggie did the job right. Maggie knew that the miners and the unions generally were far too powerful, and we're getting paid far too much money for what is effectively manual labour. I mean, you compare the jobs, miners, coal-face miners, you compare their job to the job of others. Now, frankly, it was a vile and horrible job, and I couldn't have done it even if I had wanted to. I could not have done it. I'm not strong enough, and I couldn't work in the environment. I just couldn't. So, many could. But what does it compare with? Well, in the end, no job compares with another. But the contribution a miner makes to our society, he goes down there with his spade and his axe and he comes up with 4 bags of coal. Or maybe half a ton of coal, I don't know, that's 10 bags. But it's no bigger contribution to the economy than, say, a bus driver or a building labourer or a grave digger. The only thing that meant that miners got paid as much as they did was the value of the coal, not the value of the work. It's not like a brain surgeon, it's the value of the work there. But with a miner, it was the value of the coal. The country relied entirely on coal. So they, the people who were lucky enough, or unlucky if you have my view of it, but if they were lucky enough to be a mine worker, you were able to boost your wages by telling the government you will allow the country to come to a standstill. Because without them it would. So what did Maggie do? Maggie said, well, I refuse to be held ransom. I refuse to have the nation held ransom in this way. So stuff them. Fair enough. If you say to people, we will bring this country to a standstill unless you do what we want, they will in the first instance say, OK, we'll do what you want, here's your money. But they will immediately start plans to avoid you, to take away your power. And that's what Maggie did. Isn't that her responsibility? Lawrence from Wigan thinks not. Maggie was not right to grind the miners and the like into the ground. I can't think of anything she was right in. However, Arthur Scargill, right though he was in all his claims during the strike, was wrong in his attempts to bring down the government. She was right to resist this. That is the job of the electorate, to bring down a government. She had to resist him in this, and that was his mistake. The price, of course, was paid by the miners, not by Arthur Scargill, who got a very nice pension and a very nice house. 0161228 2255. It was reported on the news this morning, says our emailer, that there was a decision by the Crown Prosecution Service intends to make an apology to a woman who was murdered by her husband, apparently because she'd reported her fears to the police before being killed. So, they can talk to the dead now, can they? I'm sure the apology will be accepted and that will be an end to it. This is the same week that a 22-year-old violent offender with 30 previous convictions was convicted of murder whilst out on bail. They must have swept so much under the carpet by now that they can't walk on it. As I recall, in the advice from the police, it is, don't take action yourself. Report it to us and we will protect you. When is this new initiative to be implemented? From what your callers have told us recently, they've been threatened with prosecution for daring to phone the police in the first place. That from Kevin. How say you today? 0161228 2255. Malcolm in Bradford. Hi, Malcolm.
Yes, and it's Bradford, Yorkshire.
Indeed
your
it is.
receptionist thought it was Bradford, Manchester.
Yeah, well, it's a reasonable thought, given where she's sat, but go on, we'll do Yorkshire.
Well, we're talking about the miners. Well, I was very sad to sort of be reminded yesterday that the action started in Yorkshire. It didn't make me feel proud to be a Yorkshireman at all.
Just down the road for you in Barnsley.
Aye, not bad. I got to Barnsley. It's a nice place, but unfortunately... and Scargill, well, he was the lowest of the low as far as I was concerned. I'll tell you what put me off him. He once said, I'm going to make the miners the highest paid industrial workers in the land. And I was working in electricals, electronics, and I thought to myself, when he said that, why? Why should they be? Because I agree with you. It's a manual job, a hard job. I wouldn't want to do it. But they had they went through school, they had the ability to be educated, they had the opportunity, I should say, to be educated, and they failed to take it. And that's their fault. Anybody that wasted time in school, it's their fault. And Margaret Thatcher, fantastic woman. I wish she was fit enough to be Prime Minister now.
Why? What was good about her premiership, given that many people believe that the state the economy is in now actually comes from the way she changed our society. She changed our society from one that makes things to one that gambles on the value of things in the city.
Well, if you're making things, you've got to be competitive. And if people can make things abroad cheaper to the same quality, that is what will happen. I mean, textiles in particularly in the north of England and in Yorkshire. We buy T-shirts in Matalan, and everybody does. I don't care what they say. They'll go to Matalan and all these sort of places and buy something for just a few pounds. We couldn't even, get anything near that price by manufacturing over here. And that's the way life is.
But Margaret Thatcher made that great phrase, didn't she? She came up with that great phrase in that the reason she was prepared... We used to talk then about men in red braces, didn't we, in the city? And she used to say, the reason we allow the men in red braces to get mega rich, and we're looking at those mega rich these days, is because that wealth will trickle down into the rest of society. But it didn't trickle down into the rest of society. It went in great wadges to offshore banks and offshore created companies so that even tax wasn't paid on it. That's what she allowed to happen.
Well, there might have been some truth slightly in that at that time, but of course this present lot, they got in 1997, and what did he do? He took all the regulation off and just let them get on with it. So this government, who are supposed to be for the working man, the working class, and I consider myself working class, my parents were working class, and but they just taught me a slightly different way to, some of us. They took all the brakes off and just let them get on with it. There's just been slight hints in the last few days that, we might have got it wrong. Well, he did get it wrong. I mean, one of the things that upset me was when he got in, he raided the pension funds. Money that I and the colleagues had paid in and worked hard for. So if you're going to say that about Maggie, this lot's even worse.
Well,
she wasn't perfect, but one thing she did was she did what she said.
Well, I mean, we must all stand and admire her for that. She said, "This is what I am going to do," and then did it.
Exactly. You knew where she was. The lady wasn't for turning, and the electorate put her in several times.
Indeed, they did. But having said that, if you with your attack on the current incumbents, the electorate have put them in a number of times.
Yes, well, I was amazed last time that they put them back after we realised and changed the subjects like that, how they lied to us about the capabilities of Iraq as regard attacking us in 45 minutes, I think they used.
I think that was
found
the
out
phrase.
To be completely untrue. They brought us to put the so-and-so back in again.
There are interesting parallels, aren't there? Because the same thing was pointed out to Thatcher with the war in against the Argentines in the Falklands and the sinking of the Belgrano. And she was made to swallow her own words live on television by that woman who said the Belgrano should never have been attacked. And the rules of engagement in those days were apparently the case. We don't know until we get the full papers, but apparently were the case that she authorised the attack.
Well, yes, well, in my opinion, she did the right thing. We were at war. We'd been attacked and we were at war. I mean, had she not sunk that ship and it subsequently turned around and went in and wiped a load of our lads out, then she would have been wrong for not doing it.
I think that's...
She had to make the decision.
That is the problem of the top of the tree, isn't it? You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yes, and she was the person in charge and she had to make the decision. I'm just thankful that I didn't have to make that decision.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have liked it either. Malcolm, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Regards to Bradford, it's a great city. Barry in Bury, are you?
Oh, I don't know. Are you all right, Bob?
Not bad, mate. What you got?
Yeah, just about all this furore about our climate change, you know.
Yes.
I think we're too much important on this planet, don't you? I've heard scientists say that in the last 200 million years, this planet has gone through 8 ice ages, not involving one man. All done by geological change. So why do we think we are so important to have caused this, I wonder?
Well, there's some evidence that what
I'm saying, Alan, is I agree with you. You said there's some evidence, but how come if it's done this 8 times prior to any man being involved, who says it's not happening anyhow? And this geological change will take place whether we like it or not.
Well, there are 2 areas of thought, aren't they? One is that we are facing global warming, and that man has made a contribution to that. Is not the only cause, but has made a contribution to it. And the other one is that we're facing global warming, and man is irrelevant in that. It will happen anyway, and it will happen at the speed it is happening. Now, the overwhelming body of scientists believe that man is making the planet warm up more quickly than it otherwise would have done.
But I don't know what you think, Alan. I have your view on this climate change. I'm not interested in what's going to be happening 100 years from now. I won't be here.
Yeah, that's regarded as a very selfish view, but you quote it as mine because you're right.
It might be a selfish view, Alan, but by the same token, ever since man evolved on this planet, he has done nothing but find more efficient ways in which to kill his fellow man. And we're still doing it.
Indeed.
So how on earth are we going to decide that we can change a planet that will evolve of its own accord? We're just an insignificant little animal walking around, aren't we?
Yeah, and the other point that emanates from that is why the hell should mankind survive? Species disappear, and for that matter come into existence every single year. Why should man be the one that survives?
Well, my opinion there is that mankind is the one that shouldn't survive.
Well, we'll start with you, Barry.
I mean, they've spent their entire life just destroying the place. There's no other animal does the kind of destruction that man does.
Well, because they're not as talented as we are.
Is that talent?
It depends how you measure it, I guess.
Yeah.
Good on you, Barry.
Okay.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Global warming, yes, maybe it's happening. Yes, maybe we're a contribute. But why should I change my life so that 3 generations from now they can have a good time? Why don't I have a good time? And if 3 generations from now they're all dead, how will I be bothered? Clive in Northwich says, "Hi, Alan. If a billion is a billion squared, as you just said, then it follows that a billion equals 1. Did I say a billion square? What I said was a billion. What I meant to say was a billion in this country is 1,000 billion. But a billion in America is sometimes a billion squared. In other words, a million squared, sorry, a million millions is what I should have said. If I said a billion squared, then frankly, I'm barmy. But you knew I was barmy anyway, so what the hell? Anyway, just to summarise, a billion in this country is 1,000 million. A billion in the Americas and elsewhere is a million sometimes. But other parts regard it as 1,000 million. It doesn't help. It's a made-up number. It doesn't matter. If you've got 16 quid in your pocket, you've got a lot of money. Don't worry about the rest of it. It's all covered. Just gone 20 to 1 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines, Anna Dawson.
The family of a Greater Manchester woman stabbed to death by her husband have criticised the Crown Prosecution Service for not charging him at an earlier stage. 36-year-old Malik Manan has been sentenced to life for murdering Sabina Akhtar at their home in Levenshulme. She'd already made complaints to the police about his violence towards her. Up to 40 construction companies in the UK are being investigated over claims they paid for confidential information to check up on people they wanted to employ. And the Business Secretary, Peter Mandelson's dismissed an incident in which an environmental campaigner threw green custard over him as he arrived at a meeting in London to talk about low-carbon industries. The woman who carried out the stunt said she was protesting against plans to build a third runway at Heathrow Airport. Manchester's weather, lots of sunshine but clouding over later, highs of 9 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester, 2020 traffic.
Well, in Prestwich, the A56 has one lane blocked heading southbound towards, it's just at the roundabout actually of junction 17 of the M60 there. The traffic is slipping through in lane 1 at the moment, but it is causing 1 or 2 delays there for us. We've got one lane closed in Goulburn on the East Lancs Road as well, with a speed restriction of 30 miles an hour, and this is both ways at Newton Road during the day, so that will certainly slow your journey down today. And we've got disruption on Northern Rail trains between Manchester, Victoria and Wigan Wallgate after an incident in Swinton. So services are being subjected by up to half an hour delays. Others are being diverted via Bolton, and some of the services may be terminated earlier as well. That disruption will continue for at least the next hour, and I'll keep you updated, of course, every 20 minutes. Any other problems, call in on 0161 244 4951. I'm Derek Marks.
BBC Radio Manchester, Sports with Mark Elliott.
Paul Scholes believes his younger Manchester United teammates will be brimming with confidence ahead of tomorrow's FA Cup tie at Fulham after collecting their first major trophy on Sunday. United is set to field a similar team against Fulham as the one which beat Spurs at Wembley, and that could mean another opportunity for the likes of Danny Welbeck, Darren Gibson and Johnny Evans. Scholes thinks that first medal will have given them a taste for more success.
I think so, yeah. I think that'll give them confidence when there's no doubt they're going to be used from now to the end of the season. You know, they're very confident lads anyway, and they've got great ability. So when called upon, I'm sure they'll contribute.
Well, injury again prevents either Wes Brown or Gary Neville from being involved at Fulham tomorrow, and we'll have commentary on that FA Cup quarter-final in Manchester Sports, which gets underway at 1 o'clock. Well, elsewhere, the FIFA president Sepp Blatter says he hasn't given up on his 6+5 rule. That controversial rule would propose having domestic clubs fielding at least 6 players who are eligible for their national teams. Blatter says he's put the idea to Manchester United and they're open to it.
I spoke with the leadership, including the Sir Alex, and they say it is a good solution because it will automatically not only give access to young players, but it will also bring back a little bit the expenses.
David Beckham's won his battle to stay at AC Milan. A deal to keep him at the Italian club until the end of the season is expected to be signed this afternoon. Under a unique timeshare agreement, Beckham will then return to LA Galaxy until the end of the year before rejoining Milan for the rest of their campaign. It's understood that he's dipped into his own pocket to ensure the deal can go through. On to Rugby League, the Warrington hooker Mickey Hyam says he hopes new head coach Tony Smith can get the side winning again soon. The Wolves haven't had a Super League win since August, and speaking on Rugby League Extra on BBC Radio Manchester, Hyam said he understands the frustration of the fans.
their expectation level is very high. You know, they're good men and they want to win things, and when, you know, through their eyes, they're probably seen us giving up at times in some of the games, and that's why they're booing, and you know, winning becomes habit, and so losing might become a bit of habit as well. So you know, we've got to turn it around quickly.
Well, Tony Smith says he's relishing the challenge after his appointment at Warrington yesterday. He says he's confident he can turn their fortunes around.
You don't have to be far off your game to get beaten nowadays. You know, and at times they're not far off. And I think everything's rectifiable. And you know, I'm excited about being part of that. And like all the coaches are saying, it's not a sprint. You know, it's a long race. So we'll be fine.
Well, elsewhere in Super League, Salford host Harlequins at the Willows tonight. You can hear full commentary in Manchester Sports from 7. Sale Sharks welcome back Dwayne Peel, Matthew Tate and Jason White from international duty for the weekend's game against Newcastle in the Guinness Premiership. You can hear commentary on that on Sunday from 1. Meanwhile, the Sharks have signed prop Jack Foster on a 2-year deal from Gloucester. The 21-year-old, who's originally from Wigan, played for the England Saxons against Canada and the USA last summer. On to cricket, and England must win the 5th and final test, which starts in Trinidad in just over an hour's time, to square the series against the West Indies. And after the terrorist attack in Lahore, Captain Andrew Strauss sees it as a chance to concentrate on the game.
It's an opportunity for us to show the positive side of the game of cricket when it's taken another knock again. So, I suppose we feel that responsibility a little bit. I mean, the majority of our time has been taken up thinking about the best ways to win this match, which is obviously crucial given the position we're in the series, and if we can do that and at the same time put on a good advertisement for the game of cricket, then that'll be a good week.
Well, England must decide whether or not to play 5 bowlers in the match. They could bring in 2 from Steve Harmison, Amjad Khan, Adil Rashid and Monty Panesar. In tennis, results of blood tests on Andy Murray have revealed he's not suffering from glandular fever as was first feared, but he does continue to be unwell. He pulled out of Britain's Davis Cup tie with Ukraine, which starts in Glasgow today, leaving the world number 192, Josh Goodall, to lead the team. And finally, for now, athletics, Mo Farah's underlined his status as favourite for the 3,000-metre title at the European Indoor Championships in Turin. He eased down to finish 3rd to comfortably qualify for tomorrow's final.
I think it's all a fix. I think they've got the 192 fella so they can get sponsorship from directory inquiries.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
Salford Reds are in Super League action tonight. They host Harlequins at the Willows. There's full match commentary in Manchester Sports from 7.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Well, they're not going to get sponsorship from anyone that likes tennis, are they? 0161228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. And the text number 07786 206 951. Harb in Lowton. Hiya.
Good afternoon, Alan. How you doing?
Not bad, mate. What can we do for you?
Good. Bear with me on this one, and
right.
It's a little bit confusing, but please bear with me because there's a lot of noughts involved in this. How much? Yeah, exactly. How much has the government roughly spent or bailing out the banks? It's about £400 billion at the moment.
You may be right. I don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
I'll go with that.
Okay, no. Of the UK population, I think there's something like about 48 million adults in the UK.
Yeah.
My suggestion is, I've tried to work this out, but obviously my calculator hasn't got enough noughts, and mental arithmetic wasn't brilliant, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of noughts involved in this. Instead of the government bailing out the banks, why don't the government give each UK adult £500,000 to buy ourselves out of recession?
I don't know.
All right. I just thought it's a logic, why the banks aren't redistributing the wealth which the government are putting back into it,
So they
but
say.
we surely would be.
Well, first of all, even if the figure's 400 billion, I don't know that it is, but even if the figure is 400 billion, they've not written a cheque for that. They've underwritten the debt.
Right.
So they may well not even end up paying all the money that they've said they're going to pay.
But then surely with the Bank of England printing more money, why don't they print the money and distribute it to the UK population?
Well,
I'm a simple man, Alan. I mean, what they're saying in how to bail out the banks is a little bit above me. Apart from the fact that I know that somebody's on the take big style here, and rather than giving it to the big fat cats like they have done for donkey's years, why don't they give it to the UK population? Who have paid these taxes? I mean, at the end of the day, you could argue the point that each and every single one of us who pays taxes is now a major or a shareholder in these banks.
Yeah, each and every one of us is a shareholder in those banks, and maybe that's a good thing, because in 3-4 years' time, those shares will be worth an awful lot of money, and the 400 billion quid that you say the government has spent may be worth 1,000 billion.
Yeah.
Whereas if they give it you, it'd be worth sod all. Well, certainly if they give it me, it'd be worth sod all. I'll spend it.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, I wouldn't mind giving the chance of spending £500,000.
Well, no, would I? I wouldn't mind the chance either, but we're not discussing whether we'd enjoy it, we're discussing whether it makes economic sense.
Well, I don't know whether it does or not, I don't care, but I have a great time spending £500,000.
Yeah, it changed my life. I'm sure.
Alan.
Good on you, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
0161 228 2255. Somebody came on the other day with exactly that theory, and then somebody else came on and explained why it wouldn't work. And given it was never a reasonable possibility of happening, or of it happening, I didn't take notes.
If you didn't catch Who Do You Think You Are, you missed this.
I can't believe I'm about to see Dad's file. An FBI file.
Luckily, you didn't miss this.
I can't believe I'm about to see Dad's file. An FBI file. It's bizarre to think he was watched by the FBI. I mean, I wonder what they thought they had on him.
Watch the whole series online now. BBC iPlayer. Making the unmissable unmissable. Go to bbc.co.uk/iPlayer.
I mentioned Margaret Thatcher and the Belgrano. We travel on. We were talking to Malcolm, I think it was, but I could be wrong, doesn't matter. Anyway, in later years, the captain of the Belgrano openly admitted that given the chance and under order to do so, he would have attacked any British ships that he could, which proves Thatcher's decision at the time was the correct one. I have no opinion of Thatcher other than she was a leader who decided what should be done and got on with it. Right or wrong, she was a leader with more balls than most past or present. It would be interesting to know what should have done with the banker. Well, the problem with Margaret Thatcher over the Belgrano wasn't the fact that she gave the order to sink it. Do you sink a submarine? I rather thought a submarine was already sunk, but never mind. She gave the order to sink it, but she actually, well, she told a mistruth. I'm not going to say she lied, because I don't know that, but I do know that she told a mistruth, because she said that the Belgrano was steaming towards the war zone, when in truth it was steaming away and was outside. And she was pulled to that position, if my memory serves me correctly. She first of all said, we were at war and we sank the Belgrano because this is the British government, had issued an order to the Argentinians saying, if your shipping comes within this range, we will attack it. That's what she said. Now, if you make that statement, that if you come any further, we will attack, in other words, this is the line, if you cross it, we attack, if you don't cross it, we don't attack. Well, it wasn't over the line, so she gave the order to attack in contravention to the, what we call these days, a no-fly zone. All right? So that was that. Now, the other thing is that she said the woman who was interviewing her or challenging her, just an ordinary citizen like you and me, said, but not only was it not in the forbidden zone, it was travelling away, and Margaret Thatcher said no, it was coming towards the zone. So again, she told an untruth. Now, whether she was lying, I don't know. I have no knowledge of what was in her head, but the two statements she made did not match the truth of the situation, and that's why she got a kicking. Alex in Bury. Hiya, Alex.
Afternoon, Alan.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I was listening to your broadcast yesterday on the recollections of the miners' strike, given the 25th anniversary, and I think you posited the question, why did Thatcher dare to take on the miners, so to speak? And I've just got a bit of historical analysis that I could provide.
Go on.
Well, just to link the Falklands and the Belgrano, well, in 1983, Thatcher was emboldened by the victory in the Falklands, and she also won an increased majority in the general election of that year. But when she was elected in 1979, part of her manifesto was to tame the unions. Now, for the Conservative Party, and its relationship with the unions, it was a very sore subject. Because if you remember, in 1973, Edward Heath actually called a general election, and I think it was subtitled "Who Governs Britain?" And he basically said, you know, it's either the Conservative Party, him as Prime Minister, or the unions. And you know, you had the 3-day week and the oil crisis and so on. But you know, Heath ended up losing to Wilson. And I think that partly led to Thatcher being elected a Conservative leader, I think in 76 or 77. But, you know, that was something that that Thatcher and her acolytes vowed would never happen again, that the miners in particular and the trade unions in general would never hold the country to ransom. So when Scargill and the NUM decided to walk out, then it was really a battle of wills, and Thatcher just could not lose it, no matter what happened. And she ended up obviously victorious.
When you say couldn't lose, she couldn't allow herself to lose, I think is what you're saying, yes.
Absolutely.
And would have fought, well, let's not say until the death, but she would have fought with every, what was that phrase somebody once used, with every being, every fibre of her being, because she saw it as an issue about the democracy almost.
Absolutely, and the rule of law and so on. But also, just to kind of widen it a bit further, is you know, and again, it was mentioned on your show yesterday. I think you used the phrase fifth column, but you know, the TUC, the unions, were seen as being in the pocket of the Soviets and the enemy within. So there was a lot of things, I think, that played out to traditional Tory voters and also to the people who had voted Conservative for the first time because they were sick of the unions, whether, you know, I like to say that or not.
It was interesting at the time when it was revealed, and there was no denial of this, but when it was revealed that Arthur Scargill had used resources provided by Colonel Gaddafi of Libya, who were a sworn enemy of this nation, and okay, he's a little less so now, but at that time was a sworn enemy of the country, and Scargill was now there were reasons for that. The reason was that the funds of the National Union of Mine Workers had been sequestrated, in other words, locked up by court order, so they had no means by which to operate, but in the end, you were sometimes forced to make friends with people you wouldn't normally like. Governments know that better than anybody, but yes, that didn't do the National Union of Mine Workers any favours either, did it?
No. So, as I said, really, she wouldn't allow herself to go out the way Heath did and be humiliated, really. And, you know, I think there is an argument, whether you're on the right or the left, that the unions were seen as all-powerful, or too powerful, and just listening to some of your comments, not your comments, but some of your listeners' comments and emails, they actually agreed with Thatcher's stance on the unions.
It is disconcerting. We had Alan Manning in yesterday, who is the Regional General Secretary of the Trade Union Congress, but was actually working at the TUC at the time, and he was saying that trade unionism now is a much changed beast. In those days, the members of trade unions were, if you like, men of toil, and now they are women working in call centres and other service industries. But
sorry, after you.
Well, it's just women that join unions now, not men, was what I took from what he said.
I mean, I probably think there's some truth in that, given you know, the rise in the number of call centres and those types of industry. I mean, in my view, and I am a trade unionist, is that the trade union movement has been neutered, really.
Who do you blame? I mean, we haven't long, as you well know, Alex, but who do you blame for that? The trade union movement is neutered in many ways. Who do you blame for that? Because it all happened back then, didn't it? That was where the big crisis came.
I think the trade union leaders at the time have to share, and some of the activists have to share some of the responsibility, no doubt. You know, you had the tripartite system of corporatism, which, you know, the Labour government had at the time in the 70s, which some say didn't work that well at all, but they had a seat at the table. But I think maybe they got a bit too greedy and chanced their arm too much, and as they say, the rest is history.
The rest is indeed history and fascinating. I mentioned the book yesterday. It's called Walking to the Fault Line. If you see it anywhere, grab it, Alex. I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay,
it's a good read. Cheers, mate. Have a good day. 0161 228 2255. Alan, will you give out the number for tickets for your charity show at Withington Girls' School? Yes, to the side of the 1 o'clock news. Grab a pen.
You can turn up at the ground
Or watch it on TV.
but there is another way to see your favourite football matches.
Eamon and Diane.
Monday from 6.
It's all going jolly well, is it not? 0161 228 2255. Radio Manchester at bbc.co.uk. Text number 07786 206 951.
95.1 FM.
DAB Digital Radio.
And the World Wide Web.
This is Manchester.
BBC Radio Manchester.
At 1 o'clock, the family of a Greater Manchester woman murdered by her husband accused the Crown Prosecution Service of negligence, and building firms are accused of buying secret information about workers.
Paul Scholes says United's youngsters are hungry for more success.
Well, this afternoon we'll see the cloud thickening to bring outbreaks of rain later. We'll lose the sunshine, but top temperatures will get to 9 or 10 Celsius.
Well, there's a broken down lorry on the roundabout at Simister Island for the M60 right now, so that's taken a lane down, and we've still got some disruption on Northern Rail services between Manchester Victoria and Wigan Walgate.
Good afternoon, I'm Anna Dawson. The family of a Manchester woman murdered by her husband have accused prosecutors of negligence. 36-year-old Malik Manan's been jailed for life for stabbing Sabina Akhtar through the heart at their home in Levenshulme last year. He'd previously been arrested after attacking and threatening to kill her, but the Crown Prosecution Service decided not to charge him. Sabina's uncle, Reyes Talolka, says she'll be desperately missed by her family.
No words can really help to ease the loss of our beloved Sabina. Sabina was loved very dearly by all of her family members and friends. She was a brave woman and was devoted to her only son, who is now under foster carers. We will miss Sabina very much.
Well, John Holt is Greater Manchester's chief Crown prosecutor. He says the decision not to charge Manan was taken by an out-of-hours lawyer, but he admits it was the wrong decision.
They inevitably have only a limited amount of information on which to make their decisions, but I personally have considered all the statements that were available in the case, and I think on what was known then, it would have been right to charge him. Not absolutely everybody in the CPS agrees with me about that, but I think it's clear enough that he should have been charged, and that we are going to apologise face-to-face to the family.
Elsewhere this lunchtime, construction companies currently building in Greater Manchester are being investigated after a firm which sold confidential details about workers was closed down. Balfour Beatty's one of over 40 companies on a database seized after a raid on the offices of the Consulting Association in Worcestershire. It's claimed the companies paid for data on workers before offering them a job. These workers are at the Balfour Beatty site at the Salford Royal.
I don't mind at all. I've got nothing to hide.
Well, it is a bad thing, because obviously you need to be protected under the Data Protection Act. Well, I have nothing to hide, so it doesn't matter. But they've gone too far. They've breached the contract, really, I would have thought.
2 people have been taken to hospital after 2 cars crashed in the Collyhurst area of Manchester. They had to be cut free from the vehicles. It happened at the junction of Queen's Road and Rochdale Road earlier this morning. The Business Secretary Peter Mandelson's dismissed an incident in which an environmental campaigner threw green custard over him as he arrived at a meeting in London to discuss low-carbon industries. The woman who carried out the stunt says she was protesting against plans to build a 3rd runway at Heathrow Airport. The Shadow Chancellor and Tatton MP George Osborne doesn't think it was the best way to get her point across.
I don't think that's really the best way to advance your cause. Look, I don't want to see another runway built at Heathrow. I'm committed to trying to reduce the carbon emissions in the UK, tackle climate change, but I think these things are best dealt with through talking to people, getting the right policies, not by throwing custard or anything else.
Amy Winehouse has been charged with assault over claims she hit a fan at a charity ball in Berkeley Square in London last September. She'll appear before magistrates later this month. An aircraft enthusiast trying to raise money to keep the last Vulcan bomber flying will today find out if they've been successful. The Vulcan to the Sky Trust have until 6 o'clock tonight to reach £1 million worth of pledges. If the total isn't reached, the Cold War jet built in Stockport will be grounded despite a £6 million rebuild.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Mark Elliott.
Paul Scholes says his young teammates at Manchester United will be full of confidence for tomorrow's FA Cup quarter-final at Fulham. Alex Ferguson's likely to play a similar side which lifted the League Cup last weekend, and Scholes says a first winners' medal will make the youngsters hungry for more. Wes Brown and Gary Neville are still out through injury. You can hear commentary from Craven Cottage in Manchester Sports starting at 1. A deal has been reached for David Beckham to stay at AC Milan for the rest of the season. He'll then rejoin LA Galaxy for several months before returning to Milan at the end of the year. In Rugby League, the Warrington hooker Mickey Hyam says he hopes new head coach Tony Smith can get the side winning again soon. They haven't had a Super League victory since August. Sale Sharks welcome back Dwayne Peel, Matthew Tate and Jason White from international duty for the weekend's game against Newcastle in the Premiership. You can hear commentary on that on Sunday from 1. The final test against the West Indies starts in an hour's time in Trinidad. England need to win to square the series. And in athletics, favourite Britain's Mo Farah has qualified comfortably for the final of the 3,000 metres at the European Indoor Championships in Turin.
BBC Radio Manchester satellite weather with Heather Stott.
Well, this afternoon we are going to see an increase in the cloud. It's going to start to thicken up from the west, and we're not going to see as many sunny spells. What we will see by tea time is some light rain starting to spread in as well. Top temperatures today on the mild side, 10 Celsius.
Allan Beswick with you on the phones. 0161 228 2255.
BBC Radio Manchester.
Aye, all right. Good-o. Right, let me give you this first. The Do is called An Audience with Allan Beswick. Yeah. And it's taking place at Withington Girls' School, which, if my memory serves me correctly, is in Withington. It's a posh school. There's a theatre there, so we're doing it in the theatre, right? It's on Thursday, the 19th of March, so it's just less than a fortnight away. And it starts at 7:30. It's a tenner to get in, and the money goes to the Children's Aid Robert Browd Memorial Fund Appeal. All right? Children's Aid Robert Browd Memorial Fund Appeal. That's where the money's going. And you can get tickets. I'll give you a number. Because it's a school and not a theatre in the true sense, there isn't a box office. So if you turn up on the night with a tenner, you'll get in. That's for sure. So you can just turn up on the night in good time and you'll get in. But if you want to buy a ticket in advance, you need to ring a mobile number. And it's 07764 679 065. 07764 679 065, and the person will either speak to you or indeed will ring you back if you leave a message. So 07764 679 065. That's not my number, you won't be getting me. That's one of the people involved with the charity. So if you ring them, 07764 679 065, get your tickets off them. And as I say, the funds go to the Children's Aid Robert Browd Memorial Fund Appeal, which is a health charity, should we say. I think it's part of the, you know, like Christie Hospital has about 1,000 charities operating out of there. I think it's one of those. I don't know that much, and I don't pay much heed to such matters. And it's at Withington Girls' School, Thursday the 19th of March. Just turn up, and it's a tenner to get in. So there. Though the reason it's a tenner, if you're doing stuff, I think you should charge a proper price. When I do the gig for myself, when it's my living, I charge a tenner. So we charge a tenner, and obviously the money goes to the charity instead of to me and all the other people that get paid out of a gig. So there you are. 0161 228 2255. If you've something to say, feel free. James in Brunswick, something to say, I hope. James.
Hello, Alan.
Nice. What you got?
Concerning the Falklands War.
Yeah.
I'll make a very small point first. The General Belgrano was not a submarine, it was a battleship.
Yeah, you're right. It was sunk by a submarine. My apologies. Back to front. Go on.
Now, concerning the dilemma Mrs. Thatcher was in concerning that battleship, whenever I read in the accounts of the Falklands War, there's one name is carefully omitted, and that name is Keith Speed. Does it ring a bell?
Yeah.
He was the Navy Minister in Mrs. Thatcher's first administration, and he resigned before the war started. Do you remember why?
No.
Well, he resigned because Mrs. Thatcher and her cabinet decided to withdraw HMS Endurance from the South Atlantic, and he, Mr. Speed, could see what she was up to. The Tories were going down in the opinion polls. There was a general election approaching, and they wanted a way to get the public on their side. So they said, well, let's have a war. Now, what did she think HMS Endurance was doing in the South Atlantic? I'll tell you, it was looking after British interests. So what I'm saying is, she and her cabinet virtually invited the Argentines to invade the Falklands.
All right. The
reason why Keith Speed resigned, because he didn't want the blood of 18-year-old conscripts on his hands. And all the very best respect to him for that.
Well, I'm not going to get involved in why he resigned, because that's a matter for him and whatever conscience he might or might not have. But the word you used was virtually invited the Argentinians to take over the Falklands. And
in the sense that she must have known what was going to happen.
Well, I'm not sure she did. Now, I'm prepared, as many people will tell you, to sit here and listen to any amount of criticism of Thatcher without any reservation at all. However, I'm not sure we can say that anybody knows what's going to happen, and I don't think it is a reasonable conclusion that to withdraw a battleship, which is effectively what happened, to withdraw a battleship is to say, oh, well, they'll invade, and then we'll be able to defend, and we'll win, and then I'll look good. I would not accuse her of, A, that much duplicity, B, that much reliance on conjecture. I think they did what governments do all the time, and that is decided we could do with saving this money. Where's the place to cut? What's that battleship doing down there? Well, frankly, not a lot. So let's have it up here.
Well, amongst other things, it was defending the Falklands.
Well, yes, but the fact that it was defending the Falklands doesn't mean anything. It's a meaningless phrase, because the Falklands at that time were not under attack. So they came to the conclusion they're not under attack, they're not likely to be attacked, so we don't need the same level of defence.
Yeah, but her own Minister for the Navy actually resigned over the issue.
Well, yes, but you went on and said he resigned because he didn't want the blood of conscripts on his hands. I think that is 2 steps further. He resigned because he thought it was the wrong decision in terms of the defence of the Falklands. But that doesn't mean he resigned predicting that the Falklands will be invaded and we'll have to rent ships from all over the damn country and we'll have to go down there and fight to get them back. I don't think he made that prediction. So there was no blood on anybody's hands at that time.
Well, that's a debatable point.
Well, indeed it is. There's, well, no, I was going to tell you someone I knew that served in the same office as him at that time, but I won't bother. But I don't think Keith Speed resigned to save the lives of conscripts. I think Keith Speed resigned because he didn't believe that the decision to cut the forces in that way was the right one. And that was, you know, that was his privilege. It's rather like saying John Carrington, later Lord Carrington, didn't resign because he thought there was going to be a huge war. He resigned because he said the Falklands have been attacked under my leadership as the minister at the time, and frankly, under those circumstances, I go. I don't think anyone predicted that the Falklands would be the I'll use the phrase, the bloody war that it turned out to be.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of historians have said the removal of that battleship said to the Argentinians, or the Argentinians deducted from that, well, they're not going to defend it, so we'll just put some people on an island that's hardly occupied at all, and they'll go in there, some scrap metal workers, and take down a mast, and we'll see how it goes. And then everybody got their heels dug in, and it turned into a war. But I don't think anyone predicted it. I don't think the Argentinians did. I don't think Keith Speed did. I don't think any of them did.
Well, it remains to be explained why the resignation of Keith Speed has been carefully excised from every account I've read of the Falklands War.
Perhaps because it was irrelevant. Perhaps because in terms of the Falklands War, his resignation was irrelevant. The action, the removal of the, if you like, the military support, the action that he moved, that ship was removed, that action was a resignation issue for him, but it's not a relevant decision. The decision to remove the ship, that turned out to be relevant, but I don't think he predicted war. But we'll see. I mean, you know, historians will write what they're going to write.
Yeah.
Good to talk to you anyway, mate.
Going back to the Belgrano.
Oh, go on, yeah.
What's the point of imposing an exclusion zone if you yourself aren't going to comply with it?
You'll have to... Well, there's no point in imposing an exclusion zone if you're not going to apply with it, comply with it. That's for absolute sure. And you seem to be suggesting that Thatcher didn't comply with it in authorising the attack on the Belgrano.
As was demonstrated on television by that female interrogator.
Well, the female interrogator, that woman, yes, you're saying that that's what happened. You know, so what? So what?
Well, so what indeed?
What war's war, innit?
Yeah.
I think Thatcher's mistake was saying, yeah, it was Argentinian, we blew it to bits, and if I see another one, that'll get it and all. Good on you, James. Have a good day, mate. Rob in Manchester, hiya.
Hello, Alan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It was just a small part. I'm no expert on this, but it was something I thought years ago when the Falklands crisis or war kicked off. I remember watching a programme. It was called Langley South. It was about a bloke, Bob Langley. I think it might have been done on the BBC.
Bob Langley used to be a reporter.
Yeah, and they were moving a ship. Now, this ship they were pulling out was the Endurance, but it was an icebreaker. It wasn't a battleship, as far as I know. Now, if I'm totally wrong on this, I'll stand
you might be
corrected.
right. You might be right.
But I don't think it was a battleship. It was, what I always thought, rightly or wrongly, was this programme, they were saying now, because of cost, we were moving the Endurance, we were taking the Endurance away from the Falkland Islands.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to stay down there. And I always thought at the time, if the Argentinians probably would have waited 6 months, I think we would have given them to them, because I think we were pulling out of there anyway.
Well, that's what a lot of people have said, that in fact... I mean, you're right in that the Endurance wasn't a battleship as such. It was, in fact, an Antarctic patrol ship.
Yeah.
So it was a fighting ship, not exactly the senior ship of the line, but it was a fighting ship. It was a statement that we've got our plane here, and frankly, if you cross our line, we'll have a go at you.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't think it was. I don't think it was a major ship. But,
I always thought that if we'd have left them, we would have given it them because they couldn't afford them. You know, the Falklands.
Well, the problem is, had oil not been discovered under the North Sea, you might be right.
Yeah, yeah.
But the discovery of oil under the North Sea changed that. The value of the Falklands is not the land itself, which frankly is rubbish.
Yeah, it's what's there.
Yeah, I mean, if I remember rightly, the land of the Falklands at the time of the Falklands War was owned by a Derbyshire-based coal company. And I'm trying to remember, I think it was like coal tar or coal gas, somebody else will remember it, but it was actually operated I suppose, owned to all intents and purposes by this private company. So we were actually defending a private lump of land, like defending, I don't know, Heaton Park or something, you know.
Yeah.
But all of that is irrelevant. It was British territory in the eyes of our government and still is. But you're right in that had we not discovered North Sea oil, and therefore the suggestion that there may be other oils and other minerals under the Falklands, then we might have just let it go.
Yeah. Just one thing, Alan, before I go. It was something on a totally different subject. I got through the letterbox, I think it was about 10 days ago. It was the new tram routes for Manchester.
Oh, right.
That they were showing and planning them out and everything like that. And it said the trams will be, I think they're going to be built in Germany by a company called Bombardier or something like that. And I thought to myself, can't we build, when you think the Blackpool trams, how old are they? They're still running. I thought, can't we build our own trams? You know what I mean?
Well, sadly, we don't build them like the Blackpool trams anymore, which, as you know, were hewed out of a great big block of cast iron. They're rather more delicate than that now, and we don't have the expertise. The expertise is...
It's a shame, isn't it, really, when you think about, the times we're in now, and to see it, you know what I mean? It's from another country. You know.
Yeah, but there you go. That's the way the modern world is. We're now part of a great big wide world. We're not insular anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Have a good day.
To talk. Yeah,
and you. 0161 228 2255. Beswick, says our emailer. Yes. Yesterday you were talking about the miners' strike 25 years ago. Who gives a toss? Least of all, you. I didn't listen to all the programme as I was bored senseless, but the gist of the programme was that the miners were the salt of the earth and the police were the scum of the earth, and no mention of the brave men who crossed picket lines to feed their families regardless of the abuse and violence suffered by them. They were strong, decent men, not followers like most of the strikers. You would probably say scabs. At the time of the strike, lots and lots of strikers did other jobs rather than cross the picket line. They're the ones who should be named scabbed. You finish your programme by saying the miners are very proud, and you once asked an ex-miner what he was, and he replied, I'm a miner. But you said, you're driving a forklift truck. And he replied, I'm a miner driving a forklift truck. How pathetic. Move on springs to mind. That's Rick in Bolton. Indeed, move on. I'm just telling you what he said. That's what he said. 1:20 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines. Anna Dawson.
The family of a Greater Manchester woman stabbed to death by her husband have criticised the Crown Prosecution Service for not charging him at an earlier stage. 36-year-old Malik Manan was sentenced today to life in prison for murdering Sabina Akhtar at their home in Levenshulme. She'd already complained to police about his violence towards her. Construction companies currently building in Greater Manchester are among those being investigated after a firm which sold confidential details about workers was closed down. 40 companies bought illegal details about potential employees, including information about unions and personal details. And Amy Winehouse has been charged with assault over claims she hit a fan in London last September. Manchester's weather sunny but clouding over later this afternoon. Highs of 9 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester 2020 traffic.
Well, just taking a look on the motorways first of all. Everything seems to be doing fairly nicely. The Cheshire stretch of the M6 is looking good, and that's usually the first to busy up on a Friday afternoon, but so far so good according to the cameras that I can see at the moment. The M60, we've still got one lane closed. There's a broken down lorry on the roundabout above Sinister Island. So that's junction 18 of the M60 where it joins the M62 and the 66. Northern Rail services all back to normal now between Manchester, Victoria and Wigan Wallgate. There was a trespass incident at Swinton earlier, so that threw out the timetables for a wee while there. And just a flight delay that's been cancelled actually. British Airways flight BA 2908 due in from Gatwick at 5:15 has now been cancelled. If you spotted any new cones or you're in a queue right now, call me on 0161 244 4951. I'm Derek Marks.
What if they're old cones but in a new place?
Well, you can let me know that as well.
Okay, as long as we know. I just want to know what you want to know. I don't want to feed in information.
Everything.
Oh,
tell me everything.
God. Well, you'll be here all day.
2020 traffic means you get an update every 20 minutes through the day.
Clive in Northwich says, not that. That woman says that. Carry on like this, you'll end up on the History Channel, not the Radio Manchester breakfast slot. Clive, I'm looking forward to the History Channel. Telling you, the money would be better than here. 0161 228 2255. Roy in Bolton. Hiya, Roy.
Hello, Alan.
Hello, mate. What have you got?
Well, it's regarding the miners' strike again, I suppose.
Okay.
Right. I don't know that everybody's mentioned it before. I've listened to you a time or two this week. But regarding the policeman's pay, Margaret Thatcher gave the police a very substantial rise prior to the miners' strike, and I would have thought that was to get them on her side.
Maybe.
A very substantial... I can't really say whether it was 10, 20, but it was a very substantial...
I don't think she gave anybody 20, but
Well,
okay,
no,
she gave them a good rise.
A very good rise, yes.
And why not?
And they even started calling her Auntie Margaret.
Right. I've never heard a police officer use that phrase, but you ain't read. That's fine.
I have.
That's fine.
Quite a lot.
Mm.
And as far as I'm concerned, it was to get them on their side, so they would fight the mine. You know, there were probably a lot of policemen who worked in the pit prior who probably wouldn't have gone on that picket and fought for to fetch them down. Nobody mentions, how dangerous it is to work down a pit. I worked down a pit for a long time at Little Alton, Brackley Colliery, and the seam I worked on was 18 inches high. You had to lie on your side to shovel coal. Now, it only needed that roof to move 6 inches, and we were dead.
Mm.
And it is a very dangerous place to be in a pit. It's very dangerous.
Mm. Definitely.
And probably, if you ask people if we could go back to mining days, would they go working in a mine? And they would probably say no.
Well, a certain group would say no, but those who were born and bred mines, and I don't know whether you were.
No, I weren't. I'm only one.
But I mean, as I say, I did this programme for BBC Radio 4 donkeys years ago as the mines were closing. You know, when Hasseltine got up and said, I'm shutting virtually all of them. Yeah. We set out that day to make a programme following the lives of miners as their pit closed. One of the pits he mentioned was Houghton Main in Barnsley, and we followed 4 families of miners as Houghton Main closed, and each one of them said, and they all got in excess of £20,000 redundancy pay. Each one of them said, I would give it back tomorrow to go back down the pit. I thought they were all crackers. Yeah. But the camaraderie, and the danger breeds that camaraderie, of course. You've got to get on with your fellow person because he could be dragging you out of a hole.
See, as I say, I was one of my parents. I was only about 20 when I went in. And, they asked me, pleaded with me not to go in. But I went in, and I was in quite a while. And I suppose you do enjoy the work. It's very hard, but you do enjoy it. Going back to the strike, are you still there?
I am.
There were a few humorous things went on during the strike. I don't know whether you saw them. But the miners, it was snowing at one stage, and the miners built a snowman around a big steel bollard.
I know this story, yes.
And this clever policeman thought, I'll sort these out, and he drove his Land Rover at it, and it buckled up under it.
I mean, I too think it's funny, but it's a very cruel thing to do. But good on you.
And another thing were amused me. I mean, I weren't anywhere around Barnsley or wherever, I were around Atherton and Bolton. One particular scene on the television, as they were starting a shift, I suppose, they have to sign on the police, and they marched them up an hill. In twos, they were marching like as those were military.
Yeah.
And coming down the other side was the miners, being acting like Nazis, and walking down the hill. And that was very humorous, And I suppose they had to do that while they were on, just to pass the time.
Well, they used to, I mean, police officers, even now, they have a passing out parade. In fact, this very day, Prince William is at the passing out parade of the Metropolitan Police. They have a military-style passing out parade. And I don't know how old you are, Roy, but you sound round about me, unfortunately.
No, I'm older than you.
You're older than you. Well, you'll remember it then.
Yeah.
Years ago, when the police were deployed on the street, they used to march in pairs, and the guy used to peel off when he got to his, you know, in the days of the Bobby on the Beat, he used to peel off when he got to his patch, and the officer coming off shift used to join the line, didn't they? They used to be marched round by the sergeant. Do you remember that?
Yeah. The only thing, you know, made it humorous, you know, I suppose the miners were trying to take the mickey out of them, you see. While they were marching up the hill, they came down it, acting as Germans, you know.
Well, there was indeed an awful lot of humour in the miners' strike that didn't get reported much, unfortunately. Do you remember? I mean, here you are reminiscing, of course you remember, but what... It's a daft question, I know, but what did those days feel like? There you are, a miner, and the nation divided so that miners were either gods or else they were the scum of the earth. What did that feel like, having the nation split into two to make an opinion about you?
Well, I don't know. I suppose you know, we were all together. As far, I mean, really, we were all together. I suppose you got odd people that called them, you know, and spat at them and all this business. But on the whole, I think it was more or less, you know, everybody. Well, as far as I was concerned, it were all, you know, sympathies with the miners.
And the last one. And it's always the one that I wonder about. Why were you a miner?
I don't know, because of the money, I suppose. It were better money than most jobs. But there again, it were hard work. Very, very hard work.
No, that's for sure.
I mean, I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, get on a bus to get to the pit for 6, and go down the pit at 7, 7, come up about 3 o'clock and probably tea time when I got home, as black as coal. I worked to the pit as well. Probably, I'm not sure where you live, but you'll have heard of Chanters. I would think, have you not? At Chilsley.
I know Chanters, yeah.
You know, I worked there as well. That were an hell of that. It was probably about 100 degrees there.
Yeah.
And it were hard work. But, you know, you had to work hard to get your money.
Indeed so. Good on you, Roy. Cheers, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Russ in Lee says, so, you say all miners were badly educated, illiterate, innumerate, unable to string two words together and probably signed for their wages with an X. No, I didn't, as it happens. I said that they were not highly educated. They were not even well educated. And if you want to challenge that as a fact, Russ, feel free. But challenge it and be wrong. As for lying in their filth with a pick in their hand, actually, it's not grammatical. Perhaps you weren't educated either. As for lying in their filth with a pick in their hand is from the truth. I think you mean is far from the truth. What experience and knowledge have you got to say about that? Obviously none, quotes Russ from Lee. Well, Russ from Lee, don't tell me, tell Roy. He was just telling us a few moments ago about lying on their belly with a pick in their hand. So clearly, Russ, you think Roy was lying. You're probably right. David in Crumpsall. Good afternoon, Alan. Calling Endurance a battleship wasn't the only mistake. Was it James made? Actually, to be pedantic, the Belgrano was a cruiser, not a battleship. Unless Keith Speed was thinking ahead of future Argentinian invaders, there were no conscripts in the RN in the 1980s. That may well have been what he was thinking of. That's David in Crumpsall. And all these old sailors come out and tell you it wasn't that kind of ship, it was that kind of ship, it was that kind of ship, it was that kind of ship. What the hell? It was a naval vessel. Who gives a stuff what it was unless you were serving on it? God almighty. 0161 228 2255. If you've something to say, that is absolutely fantastic. We don't mind. How have we got talking about the bloody Falklands? It was 1974 for crying out loud. I were no but a lad. And NH in Tameside says, no one has mentioned a previous threat when Jay Callaghan made it known that British submarines would attack any Argentine forces, which then caused the Argentines to withdraw. 2. Before the Falklands War, the Conservative government withdrew British passports from local-born Falklanders. They did. They said, you're no longer British citizens. You're Argentinian. And Bert in Macclesfield, thank you very much. It is Colite, the Colite company that runs the Falklands. Colite, that's the name I was struggling for. But I do think they were at the time based in Derby. I can't remember for sure. I wouldn't like to stick my neck out and say that is definitely the case. But I think they were. There's a story today. The operator of 20 local radio stations, commercial ones, today warned it could go under if plans to raise £1.5 million from shareholders fail. The local radio company is what it's called, and it said it needed the additional resources to restructure the business. They're based in High Wycombe. They run stations in various places, the Isle of Wight, and they also run a radio station called Silk FM, which is one of our rivals. Can I just say that I wish our rivals well? It's horrible when businesses are lost. And it would be terrible. The one thing we've got in this area is we've got an awful lot of local radio. And some of it's brilliant, like this. Some of it's crap. Some of it you'll think is crap and I'll think is brilliant. And we'll, we've got local radio round here for everyone, including this. And I don't want to see one of them disappear. Not one. 0161 228 2255. I beg to differ with Rick from Bolton and his empty-headed musings on the miners' strike. Remember this, Rick. History teaches above many things, teaches us many things. What? I hate texts. I absolutely hate texts because I can hardly ever read them. Remember this, Rick. History teaches us many things, as it has a nasty habit of repeating itself. And never forget your roots. It'll help prevent you from getting peas above sticks. Now, that's a phrase I've not heard before. Right, peas above sticks. I've got a vision of a garden with sticks and peas and all the rest of it. And is it a reference to the fact that if you're growing peas and you don't stake them, they fall to the floor, and the peas above the stick fall to the floor? Maybe I've not heard that phrase before. If anyone can explain it to me, maybe Derek and Lee can explain it to me. But the gist of it is, he says Rick is wrong in what he says. And I know it's difficult sending text. Well, I don't know it's difficult sending text. I've never attempted to send one. Well, actually, I have, haven't I? Yes, I did. I tried to send one from China. I tried to send a text from China. It didn't get here, so I gave up after that. 0161 228 2255. Rick in Cheadle. We're blessed with Ricks today. I find your suggestion that miners were not educated an insult to miners. Bear in mind that there are various levels of education, primary, secondary and tertiary, or higher and further, as it's normally called here. Doesn't mean that miners have not received education at a higher level and not educated people. To be educated does not require higher education. Education is the act or process of imparting or acquiring knowledge, skill or judgment, and miners certainly went through the process of acquiring knowledge, skill and judgment for them to carry out their very difficult and dangerous job. Compare education to intelligence, the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Higher education is not necessarily a good thing. You can be highly educated but not very intelligent. Look at the supposedly highly educated bankers who've just brought the UK and most of the civilised world to its knees with their despicable greed for self-wealth and sod the rest of you attitude. My grandfather was a miner from 1915 onwards, not by choice but by birth. He was born in a deprived area to a poor family, in a time when wealth meant privilege, and in the main the only means to a higher education. Despite this, my grandfather was an educated man, and far more intelligent than the higher educated scumbag bankers. I know who I would rather trust. Well, again, Rick, you misquote me. Miners generally are not well educated in terms of book learning. And that's the phrase we use these days. When we talk about education, that's what we mean. The idea that any individual is not educated at all is, of course, ludicrous. One is educated to use a knife and fork. One is educated. If we're to use the word education to mean things that you have learned, then clearly almost everybody is educated. But when we use that phrase these days, we don't mean that you've learnt to tie your shoelaces, fasten your shirt, write your name. We mean something a little more than that. And when I say they are not educated, they are not. However, that doesn't mean they're not clever. That doesn't mean they haven't learned to do what is in some respects a difficult job. It just means they are not book-learnt, if you will. I come from the same sort of area that you refer to, and that is a working-class area. I said earlier, my father, who I believe to be a highly intelligent man, was not educated. He left school at 14 with the ability to read and to write and to understand. But no one would say he was an educated man. They would say he was an intelligent man, a decent man, and all those other things. They wouldn't say he was an educated man. They might say, I'm educated. They'd probably be wrong. But it's that sort of education to which I was referring, and you are correct in your pedantry. But unfortunately, beyond that, you are not. 0161 228 2255. The main Colite plant and office was in Chesterfield, off Derby Road, my hometown. It's gone now. Well, there you are, Derby Road. I knew Derby was in it. Never mind. Oh, dear, dear, dear. Clutching at straws. I know you're going to say there are traditions about pit villages and son followed the father into the pit, but let's be honest, nobody was forced down the pit at gunpoint, were they? No, they were not. They were not forced to do it. But, of course, if you look at the range of jobs available to them, I remember Neil Kinnock interviewing him many years ago, and he was immensely proud of the fact that he was the first person in his family to go to university. He was immensely proud of that. Not because of him, because, of course, he was given the opportunity by others, by his parents, by the state education system and all of that. But he said, with pride and a Welsh accent, I am so proud that I was the first person in our family to go to university. That's what he said. So I said, well, what would you have done had you not gone to university? And he said the same as everybody else from there. I'd have gone down the pit. 20 to 2 on BBC Radio Manchester. News headlines, Michelle Adamson.
The family of a Manchester woman stabbed to death by her husband are accusing the Crown Prosecution Service of negligence for not charging him at an earlier stage. 36-year-old Malik Manan has been sentenced to life for murdering Sabina Akhtar at their home in Levenshulme. She'd already complained to police about his violence towards her. Construction companies currently building in Greater Manchester are among those being investigated after a firm which sold confidential details about workers was closed down. 40 companies bought illegal details about potential employees, including information about unions and personal details. Peter Mandelson is playing down an incident this morning where a protester covered him in green custard. The woman from the Plain Stupid campaign was protesting about plans for a third runway at Heathrow Airport. And Manchester's weather, sunny but clouding over later, highs of 9 Celsius.
BBC Radio Manchester. 2020 traffic.
On motorways again, generally looking good so far. I'll just do a quick check for you on the M6 in Cheshire, because that's always the first to fill up on a Friday afternoon. Not looking too bad, actually. The whole of the stretch down from 19 at Knutsford down towards 17 at Sandbach, looking good, and beyond, actually, at the moment. So that's good so far for a Friday afternoon. We've still got one lane closed above the M60 at junction 18 on the Simister Island roundabout. In fact, actually, as I speak, they're just taking the cones away, so that'll be back to normal in just a couple of seconds, as are the trains. They've been disrupted Northern Rail between Manchester Victoria and Wigan Wallgate after a trespass incident at Swinton. So there's 1 or 2 revisions to the timetable and 1 or 2 delays, but they should be starting to iron themselves out within the next half an hour or so. Any other problems, call in on 0161 244 4951 I'm Derek Marks.
BBC Radio Manchester Sports with Dennis Lloyd.
Good afternoon. Kent fast bowler Amjad Khan will make his England debut in today's fifth and final test against the West Indies in Trinidad. The Danish-born player will replace Ryan Sidebottom. Monty Panesar is set to return as a second spinner in place of Ravi Bopara, and wicketkeeper Matt Pryor is back from paternity leave in place of Tim Ambrose. England have just won the toss and elected to bat. Captain Andrew Strauss is expecting a different wicket from the last game in Barbados.
The wicket certainly looks like there will be some assistance for the bowlers. Exactly how much and to which bowlers remains a conundrum, but yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to be a real flat one, so that's encouraging in a way because we feel that there will be a result here.
Well, play gets underway at 2 o'clock and there'll be a minute's silence before play does start to honour those killed and injured in this week's attack in Pakistan. And despite security concerns, the Indian Premier League will go ahead next month with a few changes to the schedule. That's according to Commissioner Lalit Modi. But England and Worcestershire fast bowler Simon Jones says he's refusing to go.
I just think they're going to have to get the best advice now because we've got some very big names going over like KP and that. Personally, I wouldn't go. But that's me. I've got a young family and I value my life.
Paul Scholes believes his younger Manchester United teammates will be brimming with confidence ahead of tomorrow's FA Cup tie at Fulham after collecting their first major trophy on Sunday. United are set to field a similar team against Fulham as the one which beat Spurs at Wembley, which could mean another opportunity for the likes of Danny Welbeck, Darren Gibson and Johnny Evans. And Scholes thinks that first medal will have given them a taste for more success.
I think so, yeah. I think that'll give them confidence when there's no doubt they're going to be used from now to the end of the season. You know, they're very confident lads anyway, and they've got great ability. So when called upon, I'm sure they'll contribute.
And Edwin van der Sar is set to give way to either Ben Foster or Thomas Kuszczak in goal. Manager Sir Alex Ferguson, of course, is planning ahead of next week's Champions League showdown with Inter Milan. David Beckham is staying at AC Milan until the end of the season under a unique timeshare agreement. Beckham will then return to LA Galaxy until the end of the year before rejoining the Italian club for the rest of next season. Warrington hooker Mickey Hyam says he hopes new head coach Tony Smith can get the side winning again soon. The Wolves haven't had a Super League win since August. And speaking on Rugby League Extra last night, Hyam said he understands the fans' frustration.
Their expectation level is very high. You know, they pay good money and they want to win things, and when, you know, through their eyes, they're probably seen as giving up at times in some of the games, and that's why they're booing, and winning becomes habit, and so losing might become a bit of habit as well, so we've got to turn it around quickly.
There'll be commentary of Warrington against Leeds on Sunday in Manchester Sports. Tonight, Salford entertain Harlequins at the Willows, and coach Sean McRae wants his side to have more possession.
What we need to do at Salford is we need to get on the pace of the game. That's where we're missing. The speed of the game has caught us out only because we've been starved of possession. Once we get an even share of possession to start matches, and if I have a stat at half time where we've had 20 sets and they've had 20 sets, I believe we'll be in the match.
Sale Sharks have signed prop Jack Forster from Gloucester on a 2-year deal. The 21-year-old, who's originally from Wigan, played for the England Saxons against Canada and USA last summer. Sale, meanwhile, welcomed back Dwayne Peel, Matthew Tate and Jason White from international duty for Sunday's game against Newcastle in the Guinness Premiership. We'll have coverage from Edgeley Park at 1 o'clock. Mo Farah underlined his status as favourite for the 3,000-metre title at the European Indoor Championships in Turin. Farah eased down to finish third to qualify comfortably for tomorrow's final. And in the Davis Cup tie in Glasgow, Britain's Josh Goodall is set down in the opening singles rubber against Ilya Marchenko of Ukraine. Goodall was 3-love down but fought back to level before losing the set on a tiebreak. A few moments ago, he was 4-love down in the second.
The next live action on the Northwest's biggest sports station.
Salford are in Super League action tonight. They entertain Harlequins at the Willows. We've got full match commentary in Manchester Sports from 7.
BBC Radio Manchester.
A very good day to you. Paul in Oldham says, Alan, would you say that traffic wardens are educated? Well, not very well. They're not highly educated. Mind you, I've heard stories that some of them are legitimate. Terry in Macclesfield. Terry.
Hello, Alan. How are we?
We're well, this half of us is fine.
Good.
Right.
I've spoken to you before, and this time I'm going to really go into something. Two things, a bit about the miners and a bit about the Falklands.
Oh, right.
Let's go on with the Falklands first.
Right.
I think you may remember that I did my national service in the Royal Navy. That's the first thing.
I didn't remember, surprisingly, but
anyway, I did, and on the way back from the H-bomb tests, we did call on the Falkland Islands as part of a trip. You know, a nice trip. I wouldn't recommend anybody going there for a holiday, by the way, at all, but we went there. And we were told while we were there by the captain not to, when we go into Argentina, which we were, not to mention the Malvinas. Of course, that's the first thing we mentioned when we got to Puerto Belgrano.
Indeed, as you would, yes.
and Buenos Aires. But let me say this. We got on very, very well with the Argentinians, especially the Argentinian Navy. They were trained by us, like the railways were, etc. And we had a wonderful time in Punta Belgrano and in Buenos Aires. And then we sailed away and came back home eventually, you know, what have you. But, Mrs. Thatcher, let me just say this. When we were in the Falkland Islands, there was a ship there, a survey ship called HMS Protector. One of my shipmates was on board her, in the same job as myself. We had a good time together. And then after she came away years later, the Endurance went there, and she was a survey ship, an Admiralty survey ship, which meant really she had a presence down in the Falkland Islands. And the unwritten law between Argentina and the British Navy was, provided we had a ship down there, they would not even consider landing on the place. So the Protector and the Endurance were there purely as a Royal Naval presence. Then Sir John Knott called the Endurance away to be scrapped, and the captain was furious about it because there was nothing wrong with the ship, but he was told to return. It was, say, about just an eighth of a way from the area when war broke out. The Argentinians went into the Falklands and South Georgia. He turned round against orders.
It wasn't war.
No, well, let me tell you. Well,
please let me stop you there, because you just used the phrase "against orders," and I can't let you carry on.
Well, go on.
That's it. I can't let you.
Well, let me just say.
No, I won't let you say anything about it. We're going to stop talking about the Falklands now.
Oh well, fair enough. Well.
We're going to stop talking about the Falklands now. You said you were going to talk about the miners.
Well, fair enough. Well, before I finish, I won't say anything else, but this was also reported on TV by the captain of the...
Not bothered, I'm going to stop you now.
I'm the captain.
Like I said, we're not talking anymore about the Falklands. You do it my way or you don't do it. You might not like that. I'm sure a lot of people think I'm being damned unfair, but that's the way it is.
Let me get to the miners, then.
Right. Talk about the miners by all means.
When I lived in Wilmslow, I got very friendly with the various police constables and what have you, to come to my property. And one came one day... He was in tears, this constable, and he said, "You're not going to believe it." He said, "I'm having to go to the northeast, to the very town where I come from. My 6 brothers are miners." He was really, that's what, he was being set against his own family by Mrs. Thatcher, and she did give them a rise, by the way, quite a handsome rise. Let me just say this, if you put me on the other bit. But anyway, he had six brothers, so you can imagine what he was like, and then earlier on, the man who was talking about the miners, who was a Yorkshireman from that particular mining area, and he was saying, what a waste of time they were. When he was talking, the name Quisling came to mind with me. It was like another Quisling. People may not know, but I'm sure you know who Quisling was.
Well, we know what a Quisling is.
He was a man years ago who, in Norway, did the same sort of thing for the Germans. He was against his own country for the sake of the Germans to get a good position.
Well, he wasn't. I mean, the gentleman who was on earlier, whose name I can't remember. I think it was Barry, but it doesn't matter. The lad from Bradford. He had a different point of view to you. That doesn't make him a Quisling.
I know he did. I know what you're saying.
He thought the miners were somewhat overrated, and he's not alone in that view.
Well, put it this way: if you're born in a certain area, and I wasn't a miner, if you're born in a certain area, you're educated virtually and trammeled to go into the mining industry, and there was no other opportunity. Just like there's not many opportunities for people now in other jobs.
Well, the world changed and other opportunities were presented, and I mentioned earlier Neil Kinnock. You're right in that Neil Kinnock said, I was the first in our family to go to university. The alternative probably would have been going down the pit, which he didn't fancy at all.
Yes.
But just because you say that the miners were not the great gods that they thought they were, and frankly did hold the nation to ransom. That was the view of the gentleman earlier. It doesn't make him a quisling. It doesn't make him doing things for his own benefit. It just means that he thought the miners at that time were too powerful.
Yes, well...
I mean, they weren't only working-class blokes.
Yeah, they weren't only working-class chaps, and they, like you say, they got well paid. Mrs Thatcher's son got well paid, not for working, but for getting involved in armaments to the Far East, to the Middle East.
But that's in the end neither fish nor fowl. It's not relevant.
Well, it is in the sense that it's all right for one person to make a handsome salary from selling armaments, and for the miners to hew coal and get a good salary. By the way, talking about miners and underground workers, in the 1914-18 war, when they tunnelled under the Germans, the people who tunnelled there were the men who built the sewers of Manchester, and they were paid 4 times the going rate at the time. So, you know, you get paid for the rotten jobs you do sometimes.
Well, it is the nature of our society that if you can't get people to do the job you need doing, then you either do without the job being done and close your factory, or you pay more. Well, now, mining is not a particularly attractive job. It's a dangerous job.
I myself was educated at an elementary school, left at 15, went to an vocational board, and they said, "Oh, you can go in the mill industry, in the mills, weaving, or the coal mines." I didn't fancy that. I went into engineering and ended up as a chief designer of a machine tool factory, and then into sales and management. I presume I'm not calling myself educated now. I'm educated because I got a high national certificate at Stockport Tech. So I'm considering myself educated, but I still consider myself also very much a working class lad.
Well, yeah, but I mean these terms are meaningless in the end. I mean, if asked, I would say that I was working class, but I sit on my bum for 2 hours a day doing a very, very interesting job, but not particularly hard work, and I'm reasonably well paid for it. I live in a house that I own. I drive a car that I replace brand new every 3 or 4 years. I'm hardly a grafter, am I?
No, I understand.
But my spirit is working class. So it's in the end, these titles that we give ourselves and sections of our society are actually these days redundant to a large extent. But there you are. Good to talk to you, Terry.
All the best, Alan.
Have a good day, mate. 0161 228 2255.
Last Red Nose Day, Lynn Cunnington raised £65 by organising a crazy hair day at work. Lynn's fantastic effort could provide a family in Africa with a loan to help them set up a small business and work their way out of poverty. So this year, why don't you do something funny for money? For your Red Nose Day fundraising kit, packed full of ideas and inspiration, please call 0345 605 8000.
Dave in Bury says, earlier today, I heard you say that you were not interested in the news concerning Australia, and went on to call them white supremacists. Well, Alan, I think this may change your opinion of Australians, especially if this new leader of the pack manages to save Warrington wolves from extinction. Good on you, Mr. Smith. Well, on the subject of the appointment of Mr. Smith to Warrington Wolves so that they recreate the team that led Great Britain of our current coach, Mr. Lowe's, and his new boss, Mr. Smith. All I can say is when they were in that position for Great Britain, didn't they do so awfully well? Indeed. Oh, dear, dear, dear. I have a long email all about the truth of the Belgrano. I'll try a bit of it. Much of the confusion arose from the fact that, disguised at the time, that 2 task forces had been sent to the South Atlantic, not one. The visible task force was TF-317, made up of carriers, frigates, destroyers, supply ships, landing ships, plus the troops they carried. The submarines comprised an entirely separate task force, the invisible TF-324. It had been generally agreed that submarines were best managed separately from surface forces and on their own. Each submarine was allocated a box of water in which to operate, and everything that it detected in its box was considered hostile, potentially hostile. Okay. And then there's a long explanation. But that is the way it's done, isn't it, really? It's fairly standard practice. As the British carrier and amphibious task groups approached the Falklands on their mission to regain the islands from the invading Argentinians, Woodward, that's Rear Admiral Sandy Woodward, became very concerned about the threats he was facing. 3 forces of enemy ships menaced him. An aircraft carrier battle group in the north, some Exocet missile-armed frigates in the centre, and in the south, an old but powerfully gun-armed cruiser, the General Belgrano, accompanied by 2 Exocet armed destroyers. He'd already been authorised to take action against any Argentinian forces he thought were threatening him. However, he did not command the nuclear-powered submarines that were his primary screen against the Argentinian Navy. He made his desperation known to Northwood by sending an order telling Conqueror to attack the Belgrano group. However, Conqueror, as a TF-324 asset, was as yet unauthorised to attack Argentinian forces. That authorisation had to come from politicals, as it were. Chief of Defence Staff, Admiral of the Fleet, Sir Terence Lewin, went to Chequers to get the rules of engagement of the submarine force changed. One of the things that they were concerned about with the submarine force was that they wanted it to, as far as possible, remain, should we say, silent. Thatcher, who always deferred to military professionals, felt that she had no alternative. She authorised the change in the TF-324's rules of engagement after some delay, during which Conqueror, then 36 nautical miles, that's 58k, outside the total exclusion zone, tried to make sense of the conflicting signals. The cruiser was torpedoed, and the Argentinian service navy took refuge behind Argentine's 12-mile limit. Indeed, the Argentine surface navy were, if you like, frightened off by that attack. And it may well have gone a long, long way to the success of the campaign in the Falklands from a British perspective. All of that is probably true. But it changes nothing. When asked about the Belgrano, Margaret Thatcher told 2 untruths, one immediately following the other. Now, if she knew them to be untrue at the time, I have no idea. We will probably never find out. And frankly, it's irrelevant. We're at war. When you're at war, you kill everything you don't like the look of. That's it. That's why war's crap. See you tomorrow for breakfast or Monday. Ta-da!
Celebrate the start of Peace Week, now in its 7th year, with me, Mike Shaft.